On today's show, Tyrese Haliburton's concerning post-injury numbers for the Indiana Pacers, how Pascal Siakam has fit alongside Tyrese Haliburton as the Pacers' marquee midseason acquisition, the impact of losing Bennedict Mathurin for the rest of this year, and who has stepped up to replace his minutes for head coach Rick Carlilse, and what would a successful postseason look like for the Pacers. It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app on the market. And look, with playoff action right around the corner, you're not going to want to miss out. Get in on the action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during the NBA postseason. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, try Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Pacers, Tony East. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts, and on YouTube, just search Locked On Pacers. And Tony, the Indiana Pacers currently holding down that 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, 42-33 on the season. But when you start to dig into some of the numbers for this Pacers team, we got to talk about Tyrese Haliburton, right? They're a high-octane, fast-paced offense, one of the best in the NBA, but you start to look at Tyrese's numbers, and they've been not so great post-injury, right? He had that hamstring injury a couple months ago, earlier this season, and his numbers pre- and post-injury have been a little alarming. Pre-injury, he was averaging 24.2 and 12.7 assists, so 24.2 points per game, 12.7 assists on 50, 40, 87 shooting splits. Since coming back from that injury, his numbers are down to 16.3 points per game, 9.1 assists on 45, 31, 85 splits. How much do you think that injury is maybe still bothering him, some lingering effects from that hamstring injury, or are there other factors you think kind of contributing to Haliburton's numbers?
Yeah, he won't say that he's hurt anymore. And so I am half inclined to believe him, but I can also point to the same numbers you do and say it certainly looks like it. And some of the dynamic off of one leg threes, like the volume of those is down. To me, though, a big part of this, and you already said the number is, it's his 3-point percentage is just evaporated into thin air. And maybe that is because he's not getting as much lift on his shot, but every other number for him is either stayed the same or makes sense with what his role is now, right? His 2-point percentage is up. He's attacking. Like if his threes were just falling at the same rate, his scoring numbers would be about the same. His assist rate on his actual passes is about the same. Pascal Siakam is just more involved, just kind of changed what he does. And the Pacers as a team were second to last in 3-point percentage for the first 15 games after the All-Star break. So no one was making the shots. He was setting up, right? He's passing well, he's scoring well. He just couldn't make threes at all. And so on one hand, I agree with you. I think the injury might have something to do with this. The numbers certainly say so. On the other hand, he still looks like he's playing just as well. He just can't make anything. And he called it a dramatic slump. He kind of got out of it at the end of their recent road trip. So there's a lot at play here with changing dynamics of the team. Of course, him getting hurt. He's almost to 65 games. So we'll see if anything can shake up there. But, you know, a minutes change in February, an injury, a role change, a lot going into it. But I think it's really just that he can't make threes for whatever reason, whether it's a mental hurdle or an actual injury thing.
The role change is kind of a big one there. I want to talk about that a little bit more. Obviously, Pascal Siakam, the marquee acquisition for this Pacers team. We've got a pretty decent sample size now of Siakam as a Pacer. 34 games. He's averaging 21, 8, and 4, 55% from the field, 38% from three. Pacers, though, just 18 and 16 with him in the lineup. Now, obviously, there's other factors potentially at play here, but kind of how has that dynamic looked with Siakam and Haliburton kind of sharing the court together? How have those two guys grown in their chemistry with one another? And what does Siakam look like as a Pacer so far?
A really good March, like his second full month with the team. The thing that stood out is his rebounding. He just had 9 a game for all of March. That's his 5th most of any month of his whole career. He's really great on the offensive glass. He's averaging a career high in that area. And, he's displaced some of Haliburton's usage. He just had a 27.1% usage rate in March, which would have been like 30th in the NBA or something. So basically stars and young guys who have unlimited green light, for better or worse. And that's what you've kind of seen the Pacers go through recently, is how much to shift to Siakam, and then they figure out what he's good at, and then they try to shift back to Haliburton a little bit and figure out where that makes sense. But he just adds this kind of new dimension to their team completely. And we all knew this is what was going to be the case, but for a team that's so great at getting to the rim and so great at generating open threes, he is a mid-range assassin. And that kind of just makes it harder for teams to kind of figure out exactly what to do against the Pacers. What's the right guy to put on him? How should that all work out? And he just had a really nice month for them. I think their record is not misleading, because obviously that is exactly what's happened. Like, in reality, it's not fair to call it misleading because it's what happened. But, since he joined the team, they had a stretch without Haliburton, and then Haliburton was playing like 20 minutes a game and wasn't very good. So really, with those two together, post All-Star break is more accurate. Their offensive rating with both those guys on the floor is really good. They're plus 34 in the minutes with both of those guys. I think when they both play in the game, they're a little more over 500. I didn't run that number quick enough, but he's playing well. He's fitting with the stars and showing exactly why they traded 3 first-round picks for him, because if they make the playoffs, he was awesome in March. That was a big reason why.
Now, it kind of reminds me a little bit of when the Rockets added CP3 to add that mid-range dynamic, right after going so hard with the Morey ball, the threes, layups, dunks, free throws, all that. Then you add a guy that kind of gives you that wrinkle, right, that little edge.
Exactly right.
That's what it reminds me of with this Pacers team. Now, obviously, one of the other factors here at play for the Pacers, just overall record, kind of where they find themselves right now, losing Bennedict Mathurin was a big loss for this Pacers team. Season-ending shoulder surgery, kind of... How has this Pacers team adjusted to not having Mathurin, and who has Rick Carlilse kind of leaned on in his absence? How much does this really just hurt this Pacers team?
Yeah, it's been fascinating because, we've very recently seen both ends of what this looks like for the Pacers on both ends of losing Bennedict Mathurin, right? Because they improve a little on the defensive end. Like, that's where Mathurin struggles as a young player, even throughout the season. You can just see that in his on-off numbers. They're like 2.5 points better on defense without him, but their offense was really solid, and he's a very good offensive player who can attack the rim every single time he catches the ball when he sizes things up. So, like, even just this week, right, they beat the Clippers handily in LA, and in that game, having a guy like Mathurin, whose defense is rocky at times, would not have been very helpful. They might not have won that game if he played, but then they got smoked by Chicago 2 nights later, and they couldn't score, and they couldn't get to the basket all night, where a guy like Mathurin would have been very important to break that up and actually make the Bulls defense rotate and make something happen, right? So they're kind of taking their lumps, where some nights they can work through it a lot easier, and other nights they're just desperate for someone else to replace what he could do offensively, getting to the rim, putting pressure on the basket. But it's been fascinating because what's actually worked out in their favor is 2 things. The guy they've been able to play in his place is Ben Shepherd, a rookie drafted 26th overall in the last draft. He's been really solid. They love his defense. I think if they made their top 5 defensive lineup, with no regard for scoring at all, Ben Shepherd would probably be in it. He can shoot it okay. And the other thing it's done is it's forced them to use TJ McConnell all the time as a ball handler, and he's just been lights out shooting the ball since the All-Star break, like over 13 points a game. Every opposing coach is like, how do we stop TJ McConnell? He keeps breaking it up, forcing teams to go zone. It's the weirdest thing, but he's on fire. He's playing great. And so with Shepherd making shots and defending and McConnell taking on a lot of ball handler responsibilities, they've actually kept going better than I thought their bench would offensively. And so, yeah, they took a little step forward defensively. They miss him getting into the paint and drawing fouls, but they've done pretty well without him so far.
It's funny. You don't have to remind me about TJ McConnell. He lit up the Rockets when these
Yes, he did. Exactly. They saw it up close.
Please don't remind me about TJ McConnell. My goodness. Rockets fans were inconsolable after that game.
It's not just the Rockets, though.
TJ McConnell. I know he's doing it. Put the league on notice. TJ McConnell deserves respect on his name. No, all right, look. Last thing I got for you here, Tony. This is a really young Pacers team. They've obviously had a lot of success this season. Runners up in the IST, all that stuff, right? This was that was the kind of their first taste of like playoff atmosphere, kind of high intensity basketball. What does a successful postseason look like for this Pacers team in your eyes?
Making it, step one. Okay. It's still a precarious spot. They are in 6th, but they're tied in the loss column with the Heat. So in theory, they're tied. I mean, it's in the Heat's hands, and they play the Heat for the tiebreaker on April 7th, right? So there's still a lot to be decided about actually making it versus being 7, and then, oh, good, you get to play Joel Embiid in the play-in. Like, that's not it's not a guarantee they make it, right? They still have to actually do that. To me, any sort of success for them is winning anything, not a round even. Like winning 2 games for them, 1 shows that they're good enough to like compete with the top team, and 2, they'll just every game they win, they add an extra game that they play. And that is what matters to them, is getting as much data as possible about what this young team looks like in the postseason, because they play so fast. They're so up and down. They have a great offense and a terrible defense. What does that style look like when the postseason comes? Tyrese Haliburton never played in a playoff game. Really fast teams, they can do well, but it's a more of a half-court game, right? It's more physical, right? Just seeing what this iteration of this team looks like, what this group actually can do, is going to be so valuable for the Pacers, but they've got to make it to actually get that information, and that is mission critical for their final 7 games.
Can Tyrese Haliburton get his 3-ball going again? What lessons, if any, can this Pacers team learn about itself closing out this regular season and headed into, hopefully, a postseason run? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Pacers. Tony, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.